Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to dive into the world of the Kray Twins.
The Kray Twins.
Yeah, notorious gangsters from London's East End back in the 50s and 60s.
Oh, yeah, they were.
And to guide our deep dive, we've got this really interesting article from Brit Movie Tours.
Brit Movie Tours?
Yeah, they actually do tours of all the Kray-related spots over there. Kind of cool, huh?
That is pretty wild. You know, the Krays, they weren't your average street thugs.
Right.
I mean, they really built an empire.
Mm.
Their influence stretched far and wide. We're talking celebrities, politicians, the whole 9 yards.
Wow.
So to really understand how they rose to power, I guess we got to go back to the beginning, back to their roots.
Okay, so let's rewind the clock back to 1933. We're in Bethnal Green, tough working-class neighborhood in East London.
Ah.
And that's where Ronnie and Reggie Kray are born.
Right into the thick of it.
Right. And their grandfather, a former boxer himself.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he kind of steers them towards the ring.
Makes sense.
And they actually become pretty good boxers.
Wow. I mean, it's not hard to see how that environment, plus the boxing would shape them.
Yeah.
Boxing teaches discipline, but also, well, it teaches you how to hurt someone.
Right.
And in a place like Bethnal Green, knowing how to fight, that wasn't just a hobby, it was like a necessity.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Their boxing careers, they were cut short not by injuries, by their own criminal activities.
Interesting.
Makes you think, maybe that aggression they learned in the ring, it found a different outlet.
Yeah, it's like their path was almost set from the very beginning. But then in 1952, they get conscripted.
Conscripted?
Yeah, into the Army. The Royal Fusiliers.
Oh, wow.
You'd think military discipline. That would straighten them out, right?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But not exactly. More like brawls, insubordination.
Oh, wow.
They even tried to escape. Ended up as prisoners in the Tower of London.
The Tower of London.
The Tower of London. Can you imagine? Not your average jail. And they were among the last prisoners to be held there, actually.
Really?
Yeah, added to their notoriety even back then.
Oh, yeah, I bet. Talk about adding fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
So they get court-martialed, imprisoned, and dishonorably discharged.
Right back to square one. It's like the system itself almost prepped them for a life of crime.
Right.
They get out of prison and boom, they buy a snooker club.
A snooker club.
Yeah, in Mile End. But it wasn't just a place to hang out.
Right.
It was their base of operations, protection rackets, robberies, the whole shebang.
So they were already making moves.
Oh, yeah. And they were smart about it, too.
Yeah.
Not just muscle. They teamed up with this gangster from Liverpool, pulled off some big heists, reinvested their profits, expanded their influence across London.
It's like they were building an empire.
Exactly. A business empire, but built on fear and violence.
Wow.
They had ambition, these guys.
And even when Ronnie ends up in prison in 1960, they don't slow down.
For running a protection racket, right.
Yeah. But Reggie, he sees an opportunity.
An opportunity.
Yeah, he buys a nightclub in Knightsbridge called Esmeralda's Barn.
Esmeralda's Barn. Fancy.
Oh, and get this. He buys it from Peter Rackman,
Peter Rackman.
the notorious slum landlord.
Oh, wow. That's a statement right there. Buying a club from someone like Rackman shows they were moving up in the world.
Yeah, they weren't just feared on the streets anymore.
Right. They were players, real players in London's underworld.
And they weren't afraid to use their power.
Yeah.
In 1964, there's this scandal involving Ronnie and a pop politician, Lord Boothby.
Lord Boothby. What happened?
Well, a newspaper publishes this article saying that they had a homosexual relationship.
Whoa. That's a bold move, considering homosexuality was illegal back then.
Very risky.
Yeah.
And the Krays, well, they reacted with force. They silenced the press, made them retract the story, even got damages paid to Lord Boothby.
Wow. I mean, they manipulated the very laws that were supposed to be used against a community to protect their own image.
It's almost like, did they really even care about Lord Boothby's reputation? Or was it more about showing everyone who was really in charge?
Yeah, it was a message, don't mess with us. Not even if you're part of the establishment.
Wow.
They'd built their empire on fear, and this just solidified it. But things were about to get even more intense.
Oh.
Yeah. Their rivalry with another gang, the Richardsons, it was about to boil over.
Uh-oh.
And the consequences, well, they were going to be devastating.
Last time we left off with the Krays, they seemed untouchable, really.
Yeah, they had it all. Money, power.
Right.
Weren't afraid to use violence to protect it all.
But even empires built on fear, they can crumble.
Oh, absolutely. And their rivalry with the Richardson gang, that was a ticking time bomb.
Yeah, it was about to explode. So 1966, things get really heated between the Krays and the Richardsons. Richard Hart, he was an associate of the Krays, ends up murdered.
Yeah, and the Krays, they weren't going to let that slide.
No.
Revenge was swift.
And brutal.
The very next day, Ronnie Kray walks right into the Blind Beggar pub.
The Blind Beggar.
In Whitechapel, shoots George Cornell.
George Cornell.
Point blank, in broad daylight.
A member of the Richardson gang.
Bold move. No regard for the law. Sent a clear message, though.
Yeah, I bet. Imagine being in that pub. It's a public execution.
It was a turning point. The police, they were already feeling the pressure to control all the violence.
Right.
Now they had to act. But the Krays, even with the heat on, they were still pulling strings.
What do you mean?
Later that year, they helped Frank Mitchell escape from Dartmoor Prison.
Frank Mitchell, the Mad Axe Man.
The one and only.
That's a whole other story right there. But I mean, he wasn't exactly easy to control.
No, not at all. Craved attention, erratic behavior.
Became a problem for the Krays.
A liability, a loose cannon, and then Mitchell disappears.
Vanishes. Poof.
Rumors start flying, fingers pointing. Krays get charged with his murder.
It seemed like the walls were closing in.
But they had no hard evidence, so acquitted.
They got away with it.
Reputation took a hit, though. Public started to see them less like those charming rogues and more like the dangerous criminals they really were.
A crack in their armor.
You could say that. Up until then, fear kept people quiet. But the Mitchell case, it emboldened some people. They started talking.
So their grip on power started to loosen.
Exactly. Their downfall was just around the corner. Triggered by an act so brutal, even their own people struggled to understand.
You're talking about Jack the Hat McVitie.
1967.
McVitie?
Yeah.
He was part of their inner circle, the firm, their gang. Why turn on one of their own?
The firm wasn't just some random group.
Right.
Rules. Hierarchy, loyalty was everything. And McVitie, well, he messed up.
Didn't follow orders.
Failed to carry out a hit that Ronnie had ordered. You don't disobey the Krays.
And the punishment.
Brutal. Lured to a party, a fight, a gun that jammed.
Reggie stabbed him. Repeatedly. With a carving knife. Gruesome.
They wanted to send a message. Cross us, and you pay the price.
Backfired, though, didn't it?
Big time. The McVitie murder, it broke the silence. Witnesses, even those scared to death before, they came forward.
They finally saw the Krays for what they were.
Monsters. And the police, they had been building a case for years. Just needed a break.
And the McVitie murder gave it to them.
Witnesses, evidence. May 1968, Kray Twins, 15 members of the firm, all arrested. Game over.
Their reign of terror finally over. So the Kray Twins, once untouchable, brought down by their own violence. Their trial in 1969, that was huge news, wasn't it?
Oh, massive. Everyone was watching these because they've been hiding in the shadows for so long.
Right.
Suddenly they're in the spotlight. The verdict, guilty of murder.
No surprise there.
Not really. Life sentences. Seemed like justice was finally served.
The judge, Mr. Justice Melford Stevenson, he had some pretty strong words for them.
Oh, yeah.
Something like, society has earned a rest from your activities.
Wow. Really puts it into perspective, you know? The fear they cause, the impact.
Yeah, it's crazy. But it's strange, isn't it? At the same time as they're being locked up, their legend is growing.
It's true. More books, more documentaries, even films. People couldn't get enough of them.
It's like they became even more famous in prison. You know this Brit Movie Tours article?
Yeah.
They even take you to the actual filming locations for some of the Kray movies. Imagine standing in those places, knowing what happened there. It's kind of surreal.
Blurs the lines between reality and fiction.
Right. And I think that's part of why people are still so fascinated by them. Power, ambition, loyalty.
Wrapped up in this gritty, glamorous package.
Yeah. It taps into something, doesn't it? Our fascination with the dark side of things.
For sure. But it's not just the spectacle. The Krays themselves, they were complex.
Right. They could be charming.
Oh, yeah.
But then turn around and be unbelievably cruel.
They had this image. Protectors of the community.
While they were terrorizing it, they were masters of manipulation.
Weren't.
They knew how to use their image to build relationships. Celebrities, politicians, anyone who could, I don't know, make them seem legit.
Boost their status.
Right. Makes you wonder, how much of it was real?
How much was an act?
Yeah. Were they really these Robin Hood figures?
Yeah.
Or just ruthless businessmen?
Exploiting everyone around them. That's what keeps us coming back.
Yeah.
It makes you think. Good and evil, not always so black and white.
Exactly. I think that's why we're still talking about the Krays today. It's not just a history lesson.
It's a reflection of us.
Right. Our fascination with power, with the dark side of human nature, it reminds us that even the worst of the worst, they're still products of their environment.
Shaped by their experiences.
Makes you think about our own responsibility as a society to try and prevent this kind of thing from happening again. So much to unpack. Well, that's the Kray Twins, a cautionary tale, but also kind of fascinating. It reminds us that history, it's never really over. It still affects us today.
It's important to remember that, to really examine these stories, you know?
Learn from them.
Exactly. And then, well, maybe we can avoid making the same mistakes.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. If you're interested in learning more, check out the show notes. We've got info about those Brit movie tours.
Walk in the Kray's footsteps. See the places they made history.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions.
Keep diving deep.